He shattered the grand plans of an entire government with nothing but a steely gaze and absolute calm. None of the high-ranking officials had expected to encounter such crushing resistance on the wild prairie. For 3 months, the massive machinery of the state tried to break the will of a handful of people, but time and again it suffered humiliating defeat. Every attempt at bribery or threats only strengthened the invisible wall around the Indian reservation. But what really happened to Chief Sitting Bull during that sweltering summer of 1888? Today's story comes to us from a viewer named Michael from Rapid City, South Dakota. He writes that his great-grandfather worked as a government clerk and often spoke of the incredible standoff between the Native Americans and the Army on the Missouri River. Well, Michael, thank you so much for this amazing recommendation for our story. I can say with confidence that the documents hidden in the archives reveal a truly incredible picture of those distant events. So buckle up, folks. We're heading out on a very tense journey to the wild frontier. Our story takes place in July 1888 at the Standing Rock Agency in the Dakota Territory. In those days, this vast land was a harsh frontier where the prairies merged with the endless sky. Modern highways now cross these plains in a matter of hours. But back then, the journey to the nearest fort took weeks of grueling riding. People survived here thanks to incredible tenacity, braving the scorching sun and sudden dust storms every day. It was under these conditions that our protagonist, the experienced interpreter and trader Louis Primo, worked. Louis was a sturdy man with a weather-beaten face and a piercing gaze from his gray eyes. He was fluent in the Lakota language and for many years served as a bridge between two completely different worlds. The locals deeply respected him for his honesty, level-headedness, and ability to nip any conflicts in the bud. It seems to me that within a 100-mile radius, there was not a single person who did not trust this calm French-Canadian. His modest office at the trading post was always full of hunters, soldiers, and Native Americans seeking fair advice. At home, Louis was always greeted by his loving Sioux wife and 3 boisterous little boys. Their spacious dwelling was built of thick pine logs, carefully smeared with clay to protect against the prairie winds. Inside, it always smelled of freshly baked cornbread, strong coffee, and tanned deer hides. In the evenings, the family gathered around a large cast-iron hearth, listening to the howling of coyotes in the distant hills. For Louis, these quiet family hours were his only respite from the hard work on the frontier between two civilizations. Life on the frontier demanded constant hard labor from every member of the family, without exception. On their small plot of land, they grew corn and beans, carefully protecting every sprout from drought and locusts. For his little boys, Louis was constantly making toys, carving miniature wagons and horses out of softwood. His wife sewed warm moccasins and shirts, decorating them with intricate patterns of multicolored beads. Buying a new bolt of cotton fabric or a sack of sugar was considered a grand event and a real celebration in their home. The Primo family's neighbors were thousands of Lakota Indians who were trying to adapt to a new, sedentary life on the reservation. They pitched their traditional teepees next to wooden government buildings, creating a striking contrast between eras. Many of them began raising cattle, following the instructions of federal Indian agents. The people had little time for long deliberations, for the coming winter always threatened famine and disease. Every family tried to stock up on as much dried meat and berries as possible before the first deep snows fell. At the center of this entire community stood the stern government agent, James McLaughlin. He ruled the reservation with an iron fist, striving to control every move of those under his charge. McLaughlin sincerely believed that only strict discipline and farm work would save the Indians from complete extinction. His relationship with the traditional tribal chiefs always teetered on the brink of open conflict. Louis Primo often had to navigate between the agent's orders and the pride of the old Indian leaders. By all accounts, life at the Standing Rock Agency that summer went on as usual, filled with familiar concerns. Farmers repaired old wagons, women stocked up on provisions, and children played carefree in the tall prairie grass. Sparse steamboats floated peacefully down the wide Missouri River, delivering long-awaited supplies and fresh mail. The local newspaper, the Bismarck Tribune, regularly published reports on the weather and grain prices, giving no hint of trouble to come. None of the residents of this remote corner had any idea what political storm was about to descend upon them. This deceptive calm was shattered when alarming government dispatches arrived from Washington. Federal authorities had decided to divide the Great Sioux Reservation into several smaller parts, seizing 9 million acres of land. To give this plunder a semblance of legality, they sent a special commission to collect signatures from the adult male population of the Lakota. To approve the plan, the consent of 3/4 of all the tribe's men was required, which seemed to officials to be a mere formality. It was this brazen scheme that forever changed the peaceful life of Louis Primo and the entire Native American people. The famous Captain Richard Henry Pratt was entrusted with leading this complex mission. This military man had vast experience dealing with Native Americans and was renowned for his incredible self-confidence. Captain Pratt was absolutely convinced that he could easily persuade the people to part with their vast territories in exchange for small cash payments. He arrived at Standing Rock accompanied by a retinue of clerks, armed guards, and chests full of silver coins. His gleaming uniform and commanding voice immediately brought a tense atmosphere to the peaceful setting of the dusty agency. The government's plan offered the Indians a laughable price of 50 cents per acre of their ancestral land. Moreover, there were no plans to even hand this money out in cash directly to the landowners. The funds were to be deposited into a special fund in Washington, controlled by distant and indifferent bureaucrats. Louis Primo immediately realized that this blatantly predatory deal would provoke unprecedented fury among the tribe's elder chiefs. He would have to convey these humiliating terms to proud warriors who still remembered the taste of complete freedom. Agent McLaughlin immediately began preparations for a grand tribal council. He sent mounted messengers to all the remote camps on the reservation, ordering the leaders to report to the agency without delay. In the spacious square in front of the main administrative building, carpenters had built long wooden benches and a spacious platform for the guests. Every morning, Louis came to the office to discuss with the agent the correct wording for the upcoming complex translation. The tension in the air grew so thick you could cut it with a sharp hunting knife. Meanwhile, the Indian chiefs were not sitting idly by in their distant settlements either. Great Sitting Bull, a hero of old battles, began secretly gathering his most loyal followers around him. He sent messengers with a peace pipe to other prominent leaders, calling on them to achieve absolute, unshakable unity. Chief John Grass, renowned for his sharp mind and diplomatic talent, actively supported this initiative of resistance. They understood that the loss of another 9 million acres of land would be the final death sentence for their people. Captain Pratt held constant private meetings with McLaughlin, planning the strategy for the upcoming council. They intended to use the old tactic of divide and conquer, bribing young men with generous promises of quick riches. Pratt counted on the desire for new cattle and the clink of coins to easily outweigh the advice of the traditional chiefs. He ordered chests of money to be placed in the most prominent spot so that the temptation would be truly unbearable for the starving Indians. This crude manipulation filled the interpreter Louis with nothing but heavy, gloomy forebodings of impending disaster. By the end of July, the heat on the prairies had become truly merciless and parching. The earth was cracked from the lack of rain, and fine dust crunched between one's teeth with every breath. Indian families began flocking to the agency, setting up hundreds of white teepees along the winding riverbank. Smoke from the numerous campfires hung like a thick veil over Standing Rock, creating an incredibly oppressive atmosphere. The people waited silently for the negotiations to begin, cleaning their weapons and carefully tending to their riding horses. Louis Primo spent his days and nights talking with the arriving Native Americans in their dusty camps. He could feel their simmering discontent and their determination to defend their ancestral rights to the very end. Many old acquaintances, with whom he had traded peacefully for years, now looked at him with poorly concealed suspicion. They knew that he would be the one to convey to them the words of the officials who once again wanted to redraw the boundaries of their homeland. The interpreter tried with all his might to remain neutral, but his heart was torn between duty and sympathy for the Lakota. Finally, the day of the first official meeting arrived under the scorching Dakota sun. Captain Pratt stepped onto the wooden platform, his gold buttons glinting on his immaculately polished uniform. Agent McLaughlin and other members of the high-ranking government commission from Washington took their places beside him. Before them, on benches and simply on the scorched earth, sat hundreds of stern, silent Indian warriors. Louis Primo stood at the edge of the platform, took a deep breath of the hot air, and prepared for the most difficult task of his life. Pratt began his speech with long, flowery promises of a bright future for the entire Indian tribe. He spoke of modern schools, new sturdy homes, and herds of well-fed cows that every man would come to own. The captain masterfully painted a picture of unprecedented prosperity, skillfully sidestepping the real, harsh terms of the treaty. Louis translated his every word, trying to keep his tone as even and dispassionate as possible. The Indians listened to this long monologue in absolute silence, their faces betraying absolutely no emotion. When the official speech ended, the officials brought out thick ledgers to collect the coveted signatures. They laid out beautiful quill pens on the table and opened heavy chests filled with gleaming silver dollars. Pratt smiled smugly, expecting the crowd to rush toward the table, jostling one another with their elbows. He was certain that his brilliant diplomacy and the sight of hard cash had broken any resistance the natives might have had. But instead of the expected frenzy, a frightening, heavy, and utterly unnatural silence hung over the square. On July 23, 1888, an event took place that would forever go down in frontier history. Near the platform, Chief John Grass rose, dressed in a simple but impeccably clean cotton shirt. He slowly scanned the assembled officials and his people, who stood frozen in anticipation. In his hands were neither weapons nor any threatening symbols of authority, only an old fan made of eagle feathers. Louis Primo tensed, realizing that the fate of this entire vast expanse of American land would be decided right now. Grass stepped to the edge of the wooden platform and spoke in a deep, surprisingly calm voice. He methodically and ruthlessly dismantled every false promise Captain Pratt had made just minutes earlier. The chief reminded them of past treaties that the government had broken the moment the ink dried on the paper. John Grass turned to the captain and said firmly, "Friend, we will not give up our land for empty words and counterfeit coins." Pratt flushed crimson with rage, but was forced to listen to this direct and honest refusal until the very end. At that moment, the legendary figure of the great Sitting Bull slowly rose from the crowd. The old chief was dressed in traditional leather garments, richly adorned with sacred tribal symbols and beads. Leaning on a wooden staff, he walked majestically straight to the central table bearing the government documents. And as Louis watched, Sitting Bull raised his hand sharply, summoning the full attention of all the Lakota. Such ancient power shone in his piercing gaze that even the armed guards involuntarily stepped back. Sitting Bull spoke only a few short, abrupt phrases in his native language. He did not engage in lengthy debates or argue with Captain Pratt, who was red with anger. The chief simply ordered every man of the tribe to stand up immediately and leave the square, defiled by lies. Hundreds of stern warriors simultaneously turned their backs on the government platform and the chests of silver. They departed without shouting, without threats, maintaining perfect order and a frightening dignity. Pratt leaped from his chair, desperately shouting new promises and threatening severe punishments from Washington. In less than 3 minutes, the vast square in front of the agency office was completely empty. Only a few forgotten fans and a cloud of settling yellow dust remained on the benches. The officials remained seated before their open ledgers, in which not a single new signature had appeared. Louis Primo stood at the edge of the platform, unable to believe his own eyes. He had never before seen such perfect coordination and unity among the usually disparate groups of the Lakota tribe. The old chiefs had managed to do what seemed absolutely impossible in the realities of the late 19th century. Captain Pratt, in a rage, ordered Louis to immediately find Sitting Bull and bring him back. However, the interpreter understood perfectly well that this order was absolutely impossible to carry out under the current circumstances. The Indians had taken refuge in their dusty camps, posting guards of loyal young warriors. For the rest of the day, the office of McLaughlin was a hive of tense and frantic activity among the officials. They tried to devise a new plan of action, considering options such as bribing individual families or intimidating them with blackmail. Pratt scribbled angry telegrams to the capital, demanding expanded authority and additional military garrisons. As darkness fell, an ominous silence, full of hidden threats, hung over the Missouri River. Not a sound of drums or traditional night songs came from the Indian camps. The Lakota lay in wait, like a pack of wolves before a decisive leap, awaiting the next move of their white adversaries. The local community's immediate reaction was filled with fear and wild panic. White settlers living near the reservation began hurriedly packing their belongings into heavy wagons. They remembered all too well the brutal wars of past decades and were terrified of the start of a new large-scale massacre. Rumors spread faster than the creaking of wagon wheels on the rutted dirt roads of the harsh terrain. Merchants at the agency doubled the prices of ammunition and food, preparing for a long and grueling siege. The Indian police, under McLaughlin's command, found themselves in an extremely difficult position. These men wore government uniforms, but their brothers and fathers were on the other side of the barricades in the camp. Many police officers began secretly sabotaging the agents' orders, refusing to patrol the outer boundaries of the reservation. News of the Indians' bold move instantly spread beyond the Standing Rock Agency. Sitting Bull's messengers secretly made their way to neighboring reservations, spreading word of the Great Boycott. Before long, similar government councils were disrupted at the Pine Ridge and Rosebud agencies. The entire vast Lakota Nation united in a single surge of peaceful but utterly insurmountable resistance. The plans of Washington's strategists to divide the tribe crumbled like dry sand through their fingers. Captain Pratt resorted to tactics of harsh economic pressure against the rebellious inhabitants of the plains. He ordered the suspension of guaranteed government rations to all families who refused to sign the unjust treaty. In response, the Indians began slaughtering their own livestock en masse to feed the women and small children. Soon the situation was exacerbated by strange nighttime incidents on the far outskirts of the reservation. Someone began cutting the telegraph wires, cutting off the agency's communication with the outside world for several days. Military patrols found mysterious symbols laid out on the roads using stones and animal bones. Soldiers whispered around campfires about ancient curses and the dark magic of unknown Indian shamans. Fear of the unknown paralyzed the will of the young conscripts, causing them to flinch at every rustle in the darkness. McLaughlin attempted to arrest Chief John Grass on a fabricated charge of inciting a riot. However, when a detachment of Indian police arrived at his tent, they were met by a dense wall of hundreds of grim warriors. The pace of events intensified with each passing week of this grueling 90-day siege. Food supplies at the agency were rapidly dwindling, and the heat showed no signs of letting up. Tension hung in the air, as if before the powerful strike of a devastating dusty prairie tornado. People had become suspicious, flinching at the loud sounds of doors slamming or the sudden neighing of horses. Each new day brought the commission's deadline closer, making the officials increasingly aggressive. Louis Primo found himself under intense pressure from the highly irritated Captain Pratt. The officer demanded that the interpreter use his influence with the Indians to convince them to surrender. But Louis firmly stated that his job was merely to translate words honestly, not to engage in political maneuvering. For this categorical refusal, he nearly lost his position and the modest salary of a trade agent. However, the respect he held among the Lakota meant far more to him than the favor of temporary Washington bureaucrats. Finally, news of the commission's major failure reached the major newspapers on the East Coast. Journalists began publishing scathing articles mocking the helplessness of the renowned Captain Pratt. They wrote about how a handful of Plains Indians had outmaneuvered Washington's certified lawyers. The 90 days allotted by strict law were inexorably drawing to their logical and humiliating end. The commission had failed to collect even a tenth of the required number of Indian signatures. Sitting Bull and John Grass celebrated a silent but utterly crushing victory over a vast empire. Their tactic of a silent boycott proved to be the most effective weapon against the U.S. bureaucratic machine. All that remained for the government was to pack up its ledgers and chests of untouched silver. The official reaction of the authorities to this monumental failure was simply unprecedented. The Department of the Interior demanded an immediate investigation into the actions of Agent McLaughlin and the unfortunate Captain Pratt. Meanwhile, completely inexplicable and frightening phenomena began to occur on the reservation. At night, strange lights flashed on distant hills, resembling signal fires from unknown allies. Hunters told of encounters with armed Cheyenne detachments that had allegedly arrived in secret to aid the Lakota. Pratt, trying to save his reputation, began writing denunciations of local interpreters and trading agents. He accused Louis Primo and his colleagues of deliberately distorting government proposals during public translations. The captain claimed that the Indians simply did not understand the full benefits of the deal due to the malicious intent of the local French Canadians. The situation reached a boiling point when a group of radical young Native Americans surrounded McLaughlin's office. They stood silently under the scorching sun, demonstrating their readiness to draw their weapons at any moment. During this period, many settler families began hastily selling their plots for a pittance. They fled to the more peaceful eastern states, carrying with them terrifying stories of an impending Indian war. Abandoned homes and deserted farms stood as a silent indictment of the U.S. government's failed policies. Even nature seemed to turn against the white colonists during that fateful summer of 1888. In August, unprecedented dust storms swept in, destroying what remained of the settlers' crops in the fields. The sky turned a ghastly crimson, which the Native American shamans interpreted as a sure sign of support from the Great Spirits. The captain was forced to admit his complete, unconditional, and utterly humiliating defeat. He gave the order to load the chests of silver back into the heavy army wagons under heavy guard. His departure from the agency was accompanied by the silent, mocking stares of hundreds of Native American warriors lined up along the road. But the mystery of how scattered Native American tribes managed to organize such a flawless boycott remained unsolved for a long time. No one could figure out how information was passed between the camps under the strictest surveillance. Before we reveal this incredible secret, let me give you a little friendly advice. Give the person you truly love peace of mind and safety with a professional survival kit from our partners at Frontier Gear. This compact backpack contains absolutely everything you need for emergencies, from a reliable fire starter to a warm thermal blanket. Click the link in the description below to get a special discount for our most loyal viewers. The Standing Rock mystery captured the attention of the most brilliant minds of that turbulent era, who sought to find a rational explanation for what had happened. Journalists from major newspapers traveled to Dakota specifically to interview participants in those momentous events. They asked hundreds of questions, dug through military archives, and tried to bribe local residents with cold, hard cash. The first theory, actively promoted by military circles, was that of a large-scale conspiracy involving all Native American tribes. The generals seriously believed that Sitting Bull had secretly formed a vast confederation of Native Americans stretching from Canada to Mexico. They claimed that the Lakota were preparing for a new devastating war and were simply stalling for time by refusing to sign the papers. The second theory held that the resistance was generously funded by secret agents of the British Crown from neighboring Canada. Supporters of this idea believed that the British were seeking revenge against America and wanted to destabilize the northern border with the help of the Indians. Allegedly, Canadian smugglers were secretly bringing gold bars to the reservations so that the chiefs would reject American silver. The third version, the most popular among local white farmers, blamed everything on the Métis and cunning interpreters. They firmly believed that Louis Primo and other traders had deliberately sabotaged the deal for their own financial gain. Allegedly, the traders feared that after the land was divided, the Indians would leave, and their lucrative business would collapse entirely. The fourth theory was rooted in deep mysticism and the mysterious religious rituals of the Native Americans. It was rumored that great shamans had performed an ancient ritual that cast a curse of silence upon all the men of the tribe. That is why, according to this beautiful legend, hundreds of warriors did not utter a single word in the square before Captain Pratt. Romantic writers adored this version, publishing tear-jerking novels about the magic of the untamed frontier. But reality, as is always the case in human history, turned out to be far more prosaic and shocking at the same time. Months turned into years, and America gradually began to forget the disgrace of the 1888 Commission. The government soon sent a new delegation led by General Crook, which acted far more cunningly and ruthlessly. They waited for the harsh winter, when hunger and disease forced many Native Americans to make fateful concessions to the authorities. In the end, the Lakota tribe did lose their precious millions of acres, broken by the cold and despair. But that first perfect 90-day resistance remained forever a shining star in the grim history of the reservations. For many decades, the true reason for that incredible unity remained hidden in the oral traditions of old Native American families. Scholars rack their brains trying to find secret codes or hidden mechanisms of coordination between distant Native American settlements. And so, debates on this subject continued in academic circles throughout the entire 20th century. Professors wrote voluminous dissertations dissecting every day of that ill-fated summer commission's work down to the minute. They tried to understand the psychology of the rebellious tribe, applying the most modern methods of sociological and historical analysis. But no scholarly work could convincingly explain that mystical synchronicity of action among hundreds of uneducated farmers and hunters. The mystery of the 90 days seemed lost forever beneath a thick layer of dust in government archives and forgotten human destinies. It was not until the 1930s, in the midst of the Great Depression, that the first tiny glimmer of truth appeared. Old Louis Primo, living out his final days in a modest cabin, finally decided to break his long silence. He invited a young reporter from the local newspaper to his home to tell him the hidden truth about the events of the past. The former translator pulled a rickety wooden box from under his bed, filled with old, time-yellowed Native American pictograms. These strange drawings on tanned leather held the greatest secret of the Lakota people's resistance. The journalist unfolded these ancient messages with trepidation, expecting to see plans for military campaigns or lists of secret agents. But the old leather bore only simple scenes of peaceful life: children playing, horses grazing, and ripening corn. Lewis explained with a sad smile that these drawings had been passed from tent to tent over many cold nights. But if you really want to know the truth, here is what actually happened on that distant July morning. Sitting Bull and John Grass did not issue any secret orders to boycott Captain Pratt's government commission. They did not need strict discipline or the fear of punishment to guide the thoughts of their loyal and proud brothers. When Sitting Bull silently raised his hand before the commission, it was not a signal for a premeditated uprising. It was merely a gesture of the deepest respect for every man present, a call to listen to their own hearts. In that brief moment of absolute silence, every Lakota warrior recalled those very drawings of laughing Indian children. Captain Pratt lost his battle not because of the machinations of mythical British spies or the cunning of local mestizos. He suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of sincere human love and an insurmountable thirst to preserve their own home. The bureaucratic machine proved utterly powerless against a people whose souls were bound together by a single great dream of the future. Louis Primo finished his story and carefully put the old pictographs back into his worn wooden box. The journalist left the old man's hut in a state of complete shock, realizing he had touched upon the greatest mystery of a bygone era. The article was never published in the newspaper, as the editor deemed it too sentimental for the harsh frontier. People of that time preferred to believe in bloodthirsty savages rather than wise philosophers who protected their families through silence. But the manuscript was preserved in the archives, bringing this incredible light to us through the thick darkness of an entire century. The story of Standing Rock forces us to look at the conflicts between Native Americans and colonizers in a completely different light. It proves that strength of spirit and unity can work true miracles even in the most hopeless and bleak situations. Those 90 days of the boycott saved the Lakota tribe from immediate ruin and gave them a little more precious time. Are we, in our modern, comfortable world, capable of showing such solidarity in the face of global threats to our very existence? Are we willing to give up material gain for the sake of preserving our culture, traditions, and the future of our children? These questions remain alarmingly relevant even a century and a half after those heated debates on the dusty prairies of Dakota. The mystery of the Lakota's silent resistance continues to trouble the hearts of those who sincerely seek the truth about our great country's past. Is it possible that someone watching this right now holds the key to similar forgotten family secrets? The fates of the main characters in this drama unfolded differently, as if reflecting the volatile nature of America's Wild West itself. The great Sitting Bull met a tragic end 2 years later, falling victim to the authorities' fear of a new Native American spiritual movement. John Grass lived to a ripe old age, trying to defend the rights of his people in numerous courts and Washington offices. Captain Pratt continued his controversial career by founding a school for the assimilation of Native American children far from their native prairies. Agent McLaughlin wrote a famous book about his life, considering himself a great benefactor of Native Americans until the end of his days. And the humble interpreter, Louis Primo, simply faded into history, remaining to live among those he sincerely respected. He continued to trade, raise his many children, and quietly watch the inexorable arrival of a new, bustling industrial era. Over time, his log cabin warped and rotted away, giving way to modern brick buildings and paved roads. But the memory of his honesty and bravery has been preserved forever in the legends of local families, passed down from generation to generation. Such unsung heroes of the frontier often did far more to preserve peace than famous generals with their armies. Looking closely at old black and white photographs from those years, we see the stern faces of people who lived on the cusp of eras. Their eyes conceal incredible weariness, yet at the same time radiate a primal, unbroken inner strength. They survived in conditions that would have broken most of our modern, civilization-pampered contemporaries within the very first days. By studying their mistakes, victories, and tragedies, we learn to better understand ourselves and appreciate the fragile world around us. After all, the history of the Wild West is not just about saloon shootouts. It is a complex drama of the human spirit's survival. Every such story found in dusty archives or old diaries adds a new detail to the portrait of our past. We have a duty to remember such events so as not to repeat the cruel mistakes of our overconfident ancestors in the distant future. That's the way it is, my friends. Now you know the rest of the story about the boycott of 1888 and the silence of the Lakota Indians. I want to express my immense, sincere gratitude to Michael from Rapid City for sending us this amazing local legend. Be sure to send your own historical discoveries and family stories to my email. I enjoy reading them. Thank you so much for watching, take care, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more true stories about the settlement of the American frontier.